Great. So let's go ahead and get started. It's 11:01. We might have a couple others join us throughout, but I want to respect everybody's schedule since this is a short webinar. Again, welcome. My name is Astrid Ochoa. I'm the Executive Director of Future of California Elections, and we've been engaged in the implementation of California Motor Voter now for a while. And we are excited to share today's presentation. As we get started, I want to just do a quick kind of check-in with everybody. Where are you calling in from? If folks can tag in, we can see where our callers are from today and get a sense of the different regions in California. All right, we have lots of NorCal representation and lots of folks not answering, but that's okay. SoCal is just edging out a bit. All right, and one more question. You'll see it on your screen, and you can go ahead and just select it there to give us a sense of how much we want to go into the details. Can you let us know how well you know the motor voter law? Everything from have you read the bill, or you know some of it, or you just know that you've heard of it, but you don't know very much. Great. So folks know some components of it, and we do have some experts on the call as well. Great. Well, thanks for helping us answer those questions. It gives us a good sense of where we are on the call and how we can focus today's presentation, and there you'll see the results from that. So I want to welcome our presenters today. We have James Schwab, Deputy Secretary of State for Policy and Planning with the Office of California Secretary of State Alex Padilla. And James oversees implementation of new election laws and policy. We also have Lori Schellenberger. She's a voting rights strategist and consults and has been leading this effort largely, and also in her previous role as the director of the ACLU of the California Voting Rights Project. So we've been doing this for about 2 years now. So welcome, James and Lori.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
And so let's go ahead and get started. We have a couple of slides that James has put together to give kind of an overview, and then we can really focus on a couple of Q&A. So again, we're using the chat feature. The lines are going to be muted because we do have a lot of folks on the call. But we're using the chat window for questions, so go ahead and type in your questions at any time. And let's jump into it. And James, I'll be forwarding your slides, so you just let me know when to advance.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everyone. So we are on the verge of launching California Motor Voter. That is the branded name of this program. You might have heard the term automatic voter registration, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but the program's name will be called California Motor Voter. We have a website, which I'll talk more about in a little bit as well. It's motorvoter.sos.ca.gov. We also have a hashtag, hashtag CA Motor Voter. So if you're talking about Motor Voter on social media, please use the hashtag so we can monitor the discussion that's happening. Next slide, please. So a little more background too before we go into how it all works is in 2015, the Secretary of State sponsored Assembly Bill 1461 by Assembly Member Lorena Gonzalez-Fletcher. It made its way through the process and was passed by both houses and signed by the governor in the fall of 2015. And we've been working on implementation since. So it's been about a 2.5 year process, and we're excited for it to launch here shortly. So how it works. There's a couple of big changes and some small changes from how we've experienced registering to vote at the DMV in the past. The biggest change that's going to happen when we launch is the DMV is going to have a new electronic form for applying for a driver's license or state ID. And the way it's going to work is you'll be able to fill out this form either on your smartphone or on your desktop or laptop at home, pre-fill out all the information, including the voter registration information, and then you'll be directed to finish your transaction at the DMV office. So that's the important thing to remember is you'll fill out this form beforehand, before you make your appointment or go into an office. And then you have to actually complete the transaction and register to vote once you go to the field office, provide your signature, provide the documents that you'll be using to fill out and complete the form. So that's the biggest change I think people will experience going into the DMV, is a new electronic form available to them. Right now, the DMV does have certain transactions that you can do online. Those will also be subject to this new process. Right now, under the current model, you'll be directed to go to our Secretary of State's online voter registration site, and you'll have some information that would be pre-populated. So a little bit of a change there, which I'll get into, but right now the limited online services the DMV provides will also be affected by this. Renewal by mail, that process basically remains the same except for the changes on the voter registration end. So if you renew your license or your state ID by mail, that's basically the same except for the portion regarding voter registration. Change of address. If you're just changing your address to the DMV, that will also be subject to this new voter registration process, which I'll get into shortly. So you can see that there's a lot of the same transactions that you go through the DMV online, renewal by mail, change of address, are essentially remaining the same except for these changes to the voter registration end of it. The big change is the new electronic driver's license and state ID form. So how does it actually work? How does this motor voter work in terms of voter registration? So when you're filling out the electronic driver's license or state ID form, you'll go through all of the information for the DMV to get that license, your address, you're checking the box on your preferences for your ID, and then you get to the voter registration section. And right up front, we have you have to attest to your eligibility to be a registered voter. There's signage on these pages that this is for citizens only, and so we kick it off with the voter registration section on attesting to eligibility, with the first question being citizenship. So the first question presented to you is, are you a U.S. citizen? If you select yes, you move on. If you select no, you are pushed to the end of the form to complete your transaction, and you skip all other remaining parts of the voter registration section. So once you select yes to eligibility, to citizenship, you then move on to the rest of the eligibility requirements. You're 18, that's actually a good point. Pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds will be included with the launch. So if you're 16, 17 applying for your learner's permit or your first driver's license, you will be captured by this process as well. So you'll be asked your eligibility for age, your residency in California, you're not in prison or on parole, and you'll attest to all that. And if you say yes and that you're eligible, you'll then move on to the voter preference section. If you say no to all that, again, you'll be kicked back to the end of the process where you'll complete the form and skip the rest of the voter registration questions. So the big change in the process is the opt-in versus the opt-out. So after you've indicated that you're eligible to vote, you'll be able to move on to your preferences, your voter preferences, or you'll be able to give an opportunity to opt out. You don't want to use this process to register to vote. So once you test eligibility and you select that you want to continue to register to vote, you'll move on. If you select opt out, I don't want to be registered to vote, then you'll move to the end of the process and complete your transaction and skip the rest of the voter registration questions. The default will be that you're opted in. You will be registered to vote, so you have to be proactive in selecting opting out. Once you've selected that, you'll move on through the regular voter registration preferences that you've seen before, your political party, do you want to vote by mail, your language preference, and you'll select those, and you will go through that process and complete it. And then at the end of that process, you'll be asked to go to the field office to finish the transaction, providing your signature and the documents you need to complete your application for the driver's license or state ID. So again, you have to go to the field office before you're officially registered to vote and before you can complete the process for getting your driver's license and state ID. So that's the important thing to remember, is that while you may be filling this form out on Monday, if you don't go to the field office and complete it until Friday, you won't be registered to vote until Friday. And there will be language on the form to make sure people are aware of that in case you're close to election. It'll warn people that there's an election coming up and you may want to register sooner because the process may take a little longer to complete. Next slide. So we have created a website to inform the public in partnership with the DMV. On the website, you can find frequently asked questions in English and Spanish. We're working on translating those into additional languages. As you may know, our office provides translated materials in 9 additional languages other than English. We hope to achieve that soon. You can check the status of your voter registration through this website. And there's also 2 links that will take you to the DMV website. One is to find the nearest field office, and the other one is to look up your renewal information for your driver's license or your state ID. So we'll go into a little bit of each of these sections when you click through. So next slide, please. Here's the frequently asked questions page. This is just a screenshot of it. You can see at the top there's the selection for Spanish, the translated version. There's many frequently asked questions on this page, and they have links to even more in-depth information. So if you have some really hard questions and you want specific information, this is the place to go. Next slide, please. This is our screenshot of our voter status page. It's actually a really good tool whether or not you're using voter or not. It's available on our website and our Secretary of State app. You can check if you're registered to vote. You can check where you're registered to vote, your political party preference, your language preference for the election materials you receive from the state and the county, and you can check whether or not your previous vote-by-mail ballot or if you voted provisionally, perhaps, whether those were counted or not, and if they were not counted, why not? As this page gets closer to the election, we also add links to finding your polling place or your vote center, depending on where you're living in 2018, and also links to upcoming local and state elections and contact information for your county election official's office. That information gets added as we get closer to the election. And you can see that it's pretty simple information you enter to check your record, your first, your last name, your driver's license number or state ID, last 4 of your social, and your date of birth. And this is to make sure we can match you to the correct record. So again, this is a very useful tool for motor voter in case you're questioning whether or not your registration went through or not, or even if you need to go through the process when you get to the DMV. Some people forget how they might have selected their party preference or whether or not they had voted by mail or they signed up to vote by mail or not. So this is a great place to go to check that information. Next slide, please. So the other portal on our webpage takes you to the finding a field office in the DMV. DMV has, I think, around 156 field offices throughout California. Every one of them will be launching California Motor Voter at the same time. There won't be any rollout. So this is where you can go to look up where your nearest field office is. Next slide, please. And lastly, this is a screenshot of the DMV page for looking up your online renewal services, so whether or not you can renew your driver's license or state ID online and getting obtaining the online driver's license and state ID form. So once the online form, electronic form, is launched on Monday, it'll be available here on this website. Right now it doesn't appear because it's not launched yet, but this is where you find it. And again, that portal is available on the motorvoter.sos.ca.gov website. So in summary, I think there'll be a lot of questions about how this process works. that you can find answers to on our website. But really it comes down to the difference between opting into voter registration and opting out. So there'll be a default when you're registering to vote that if you're attest to your eligibility to be an eligible voter, you'll be opted in. You'll be registered to vote. And then if you don't want to be, you have to proactively select opting out. The term automatic registration is kind of what's synonymous with this process. That's more, to me, of a wonky term of art. It doesn't necessarily describe the process itself. So I like to use the opt-in versus opt-out description to describe how this process is going to work. And again, the name of the program is the California Motor Voter. So thank you very much, and I'll be around for Q&A.
Great. Thanks, James. I'm going to hand it over to Lori, and Lori's going to share about how many stakeholders have been engaged in this process for the last couple of years. So thank you for joining us, Lori.
Hi, everyone, and I want to say thanks to James for his great presentation and for his leadership on this issue. He started working on this many, many years ago, he and Secretary Padilla trying to get this moving, so it's really exciting to see it finally about to launch. As Astrid said, I started working on this when I was with ACLU of California, and I continue to lead a group and facilitate a group of stakeholders that have worked on this for a very long time. And we like to share that with folks so that they understand how diverse the set of stakeholders were that were involved, not only in helping to craft this legislation as it went through the legislature, but also through every step of implementation. And we've been working in partnership with the Secretary of State and DMV, who've been really great at collaborating with us and taking stakeholder input. And I just wanted to share who those stakeholders are, because I think it gives folks a really good sense of how many different groups have been involved and how many different interests have, I think, been represented in the process and in the final product. So it's been California Common Cause, of course, ACLU of California, the League of Women Voters of California, Disability Rights California, Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Los Angeles, DEMOS, the Brennan Center for Justice, the California Immigrant Policy Center, ACE, UNIDOS, which was formerly National Council of La Raza, the National Immigrant Law Center, and I think I've included, and Future of California, Astrid on behalf of Future of California Elections. So as you can see, it was a big group of folks who have met almost weekly for the last 2 years to work on this, and we're really excited about the end product. A couple of things I want to mention is even though when we try to describe this new process, it takes much longer than it actually takes to do it, and that's something that we think is really cool about it, is that it's really quick and seamless and user-friendly. And what it really means is that no matter what form you're filling out at DMV, whether it's an application or a renewal or a change of address, voter registration is incorporated into that form, whether it's paper, whether it's online, or whether it's this new electronic application that you can do ahead of time or complete in a field office on a kiosk. And so it's for the first time DMV has voter registration incorporated into all of its forms. And the second thing that I wanted to highlight is that it really, the change of address piece is also really exciting. Folks who do voter engagement work know how frustrating it's been over the years to have folks think they changed their address at DMV and that it applied to their registration and it in fact didn't go through. You used to have to re-register to vote if you moved to a new county. And now with our new statewide voter database and the new systems in place at DMV, registration will be portable if you submit a change of address to DMV. And what that means is it doesn't matter if you're moving within your county or you're moving to a new county. Your change of address will be updated for your voter registration as well, unless you opt out of that. You will have that option to opt out, but the default will be to update your address when you move. And I think that's really exciting and will really improve, the accuracy of our voter rolls and ensure folks show up and are able to vote on Election Day. A couple other things I just want to highlight before we open it for questions is that The stakeholders that worked on this really think that California has developed a model for the rest of the country for a variety of reasons. The biggest of which I think is that there's been extensive field testing both on the electronic and the paper forms by the state and by the Center for Civic Design, and that's been done in multiple languages. As James already said, voter registration is available in 10 different languages now at DMV, and it should be accessible to people with disabilities. They've got new equipment in their field offices that's more accessible than what was previously available. And it also includes several layers of protection to ensure non-citizens are not inadvertently registered to vote. In addition to what James described as very clear explanations about citizenship when someone and who can and can't eligible to vote, it also includes several back-end data firewalls so that data isn't transferred improperly to the Secretary of State. So I just want to reassure folks on that front as well. And with that, I will toss it back to Astrid because I know we want to have time for questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, James and Lori, and to folks for submitting your questions via the chat box. We have about 8 to 10 minutes left on the call, so we'll go ahead and try to get through as many questions as possible. The first question we have is, do applicants have the option not to answer the citizenship question?
Yes. There is 3 choices for answering the citizenship and eligibility question, and that's sort of decline to respond. So there'll be yes, no, and decline, and they'll choose that one, and that's an option for folks that don't feel comfortable answering yes or no.
Great. And then the second question is, what exactly is a field office, if you could clarify?
A field office is just an office of the DMV, just a physical brick-and-mortar office.
Got it. And then someone also wanted to know what other languages the FAQ page will be available in and when those other languages will be available online.
Sure. So the goal is to get to the 10 languages that we provide our voter registration material in, and that is Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, Japanese, Khmer, Korean, Tagalog, Thai, and Vietnamese.
And the next question is, what if someone doesn't have a computer at home? What are their options?
They can still go into the office itself, any of those field offices, and there'll be in-person options, accessible in-person options. They'll have terminals like these touch screens that have been used in the past will be used for the voter registration and driver's license application. It may vary what type of terminal you'll get per office, but it'll be an electronic terminal that you can still fill out the same form.
And the next question is, what happens if students pre-register online but don't have a signature at the DMV?
So if you pre-register online, you have a signature at the DMV, you'll be asked to print, sign, and then mail back the card, the printed version of the form that's given to you. That's why I actually encourage, if you're doing pre-registration activity, to really get students to fill out a paper form. I think it's the best practice because you can engage the students and teach them about voting, not just the voter registration part of it. But yeah, if they don't have a signature or haven't gone to a DMV, they'll be asked to print and sign the form.
And another question is, does the application determine whether they are a resident of California along with being a citizen?
Under the eligibility section, after you've answered the citizenship question, you move on to the remaining eligibility questions. One of the things you're attesting to is your residency in California.
Great. And I'll see if we have, okay. Another question is, what happens if a non-citizen accidentally checks on the eligibility question?
Sure. So we know that in California, there's driver's licenses that are offered for folks that can't prove their legal residency in the U.S. They're known as AB60 licenses. And there's a physical firewall, or there's a digital firewall that prevents those records from being sent to the Secretary of State. And so even if there's a mistake made by someone applying for an AB60 license, that information would not be sent because of the firewall.
And we have about 4 more minutes left on the call, so if folks have any remaining questions, please feel free to put that in the chat box. I don't see any more coming in right now.
And before we conclude, I wanted to share with folks just some additional resources. So here we have the items that James shared with us, the website that the Secretary of State has put together where you can find the fact sheet and other information. And then I also wanted to share a document that Future of California Elections put together, and it's our election reform primer. And in the primer, there is a 2-page brief summary on the California motor voter, and it has a section that has what voters need to know. And an especially important part of this process is to remind folks that if they start their application online, they have to go to the DMV office to complete that transaction. And so this document helps just provide some language and really provide that essential information that voters have to go in person to complete their transaction, and especially as we're nearing an election, if people are uncertain if their voter registration is complete, as James mentioned, you can go in to the Secretary of State's website and just double check that your registration is complete. And Rachel, do we have one more question coming in?
Let me see. One question is, what documents what documents are required when a person finishes the process at the DMV?
I don't have the exhaustive list in front of me. That's more on the DMV end, but it's generally the forms you used in the past. So your passport, Social Security card, birth certificates, military ID. There are some new requirements because the DMV now offers a real ID, which is I won't get into depth here because I'm not an expert on that. But it's not a requirement to get a real ID, but there are different levels of documents you have to bring for that. So I would just look on the DMV website to see how that applies, and that would be on the same page. That's on the slide that was up for a while. You could look up the information on what ID you need to bring for a real ID.
And just one last question. How secure is the connection between the DMV and the Secretary of State's office?
It's secure. I mean, it's not a public portal. It's a secure connection between the DMV and the SOS that's been in existence for since at least 2012 when we launched online voter registration. So quick background is that the way online voter registration works is you complete the process by allowing us to grab your signature from the DMV and bring it over to your voter registration record. And so that secure portal has been in existence for almost about 5.5 years now. So we're confident.
Great. Thank you, James. Thank you, Lori. We're at time, and we want to be respectful of everybody's busy schedules. So if we didn't get to your question now, we're going to go ahead and respond via email to get back to you. Again, these are some resources available to you that are posted right now on the website, motorvoter.sos.ca.gov, and then the Future of California Elections 2018 Primer. Thank you very much, James. I know you are incredibly busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us and give us the download on a very exciting change that will go live next week. And Lori, thank you so much also for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. And if you want more information, please keep in touch with future California elections. You can visit our website, call us, email us, follow us on Twitter. Use the hashtag California Motor Voter as you see this process roll out and maybe experience it yourself. We look forward to keeping the conversation going. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.